lights on the screen, hey, it's Grant and Ryan. We bleed purple, talking hoops, never lying. Sacramento Kings, we rise and we fall. If you don't like that, then you don't know ball. Jerry sitting with the stories of the game, spilling all the truth, driving legends insane. From the Cow Palace days to Arco's roar, this town's heart beats on the hardwood floor. If you don't like that, turn away now. Kings in our blood, we ride strong and proud. Running up the score, Kings never back down. If you don't like that, this ain't your town.
We have a lot to talk about today, along with Ryan in Sacktown and Jerry Reynolds, Grant Napier. By the way, if you did not see today's show at 3 o'clock with Sean Salisbury, go back and watch it at your convenience. He had some amazing things to say about John Robinson, who just passed away, the legendary football coach. But we are talking Kings. We're talking about NBA. Guys, we always look at the schedule and we try to forecast it, but the one thing you can't forecast is injuries, and Sacramento's getting a Phoenix team with no Kevin Durant, and you also have Bradley Beal and Grayson Allen, who are questionable. So, the table looks like it's set pretty good. We know the Kings don't have Malik Monk, but you got to go out and figure out a way to win this game tonight, Ryan.
Yeah, you absolutely do, Grant. Pressure, pressure, pressure. Bring the energy. If you do that, that should give you more than enough coming off of them playing last night, Jerry. And it changes the table for Phoenix, especially without those guys, huh, Jerry?
Well, it should. I mean, that's what you're counting on. I mean, you really, but you've got to treat this as Phoenix's full strength if you're the Kings,
Yep.
because in the NBA, a lot of guys, when they get their opportunities, raise up and have good games, and so and the Kings need to win. Obviously,
They do.
They're home, and you've got to win your home game. Simple as that.
Jerry, you've been a coach in this league before, and you know what it's like sometimes when you look down this way and you're like, I can't really put him in. I can't really put him in. I don't want to play my starters too many minutes. And it seems like that's the predicament that Mike Brown's in right now. He's got a tremendous starting unit, but he's playing them a lot of minutes. And one of the main reasons is he has a very unproductive bench. I actually think, Jerry, that the Kings bench is one of the very weakest in the NBA. It's a tough situation for a coach, isn't it?
It really is. I mean, especially when you've got such a good starting unit. I mean, he really has a great starting unit. So, as a coach, you're happy about that. But your starters can't play 48. And I agree with you. Certainly the Kings bench thus far have been right near the bottom, if not the bottom of the league, as far as productiveness. So, and that's, you look 90 miles down the road to Golden State, and really that's a key part of why they've gotten off to such a great start. They have got a very deep and productive bench.
Yeah, I think, Jerry, it might be the most balanced team that Golden State has had in recent memory. Steve Kerr will go as much as 13 deep at times. You got 7 guys averaging 2 or more assists. They've got a balanced basketball team.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of the championship team the Warriors had back in '75. Rick Barry and a bunch of really good players.
Yeah.
They were 8, 9, 10 really good players and one superstar. And I mean, I think with Curry, of course, is the superstar. And then but you've got a bunch of good players that start or come off the bench. So, yeah, I think Steve Kerr and them, they bear watching.
Jerry, what we've seen early on in the year from the Kings, their three-point shooting is not good, and their three-point shooting defense has been awful. When you watch this team play, it's a different style than we've seen under Mike Brown in the first 2 years, and DeMar DeRozan has a lot to do with that. Do you like the style of basketball that the Kings are playing right now, number one? And number two, how do you get better defensively against the three ball?
Well, I think one thing that I would do, I would not double team and trap so high away from the basket, because NBA players' guards are too good and they're splitting that. And then when you get a pass into the painted area or by dribble, then defense collapses, and then you get those easy kickouts in the corners. And I think we're seeing a lot of that. I mean, plus it just is too much for Domas to cover. He's out there doubling 30 foot away from the basket and then trying to rotate back. And I just think it puts them in a terrible situation. And I don't think they get near enough turnovers out of it to make up for the real wide open, easy threes. So I think.
So what you're saying is one quick pass and the offense has a 4-on-3 situation. And if you're 4-on-3 in the NBA, you're going to get torched.
You're giving up something, and the Kings are giving up some open threes. I think too that there's a little bit of the where the guy, it's not a lack of effort or anything, but they're over helping. It's the old I always say, I always called it my Mike Bibby defense, to where he gets in an area where he can't help and he can't get back. And
Right.
and I think you're seeing a lot of guys that say, especially from the weak side, they're leaving shooters to go help where they're really of no help. And you better stay on those shooters. That's all. I mean, if you leave a shooter, don't leave any further than you can get back to him. And I think that's, it's part of kind of being over aggressive. Sometimes being smart is more important.
Jerry, we've seen Luke Laux tweak the zone defense, and you covered some of it just a couple seconds ago. Would you like to see the Kings play a little bit more zone without the trapping?
Yeah, I would. Just try to match up a little more. Try to match up on the ball one-on-one, because you've got help. That's what a zone does. It gives you that extra man the next area over to help if you need it. I don't think you can win in the NBA playing a lot of zone because players are too good. But I think as the tempo change is terrific, play it a couple of minutes, go back to man. About the time they get used to the man, show them the zone again, maybe a different zone. I think for a smaller team, and I think it's a great point, Ryan. I think for a smaller team, you really need to try to break the tempo of the bigger, stronger teams.
Sure.
Jerry, I know you're a huge Keegan Murray fan, but his shot has not been there this year, particularly from three. I've talked about this a lot with Ryan, and he's brought up, I think, a very good point. And you've discussed this as well. He's on a team right now where he's the fourth or fifth option among the starters. And when Malik Monk's on the floor, that goes down a notch. So maybe it's, not getting into the rhythm offensively, not in the flow, but do you worry about him at all or no?
Well, as a all-around play, I don't. But there's no doubt his shooting has not been up to standards. And I mean, but you brought up some good points here. I mean, for guys that are shooters, when you're getting less shots, sometimes it's a little harder to get into a rhythm. And I think that's part of it. As you pointed out, I mean, he's kind of the fifth option. And so he's not going to get as many shots. I think, he has to learn to adjust to that. And I mean, to me, he can be a better player than he was last year by scoring less points. It's all about productivity, and I've noticed on his 3-point shot, I think we talked about this, I think last time. I mean, he's really flattening his ball out a little bit. He did that last year for a while. He's really just not getting enough air under it. The arch just needs to be picked up. It looks like he's not getting enough leg in it. That's usually the case. So I think
but that should be easily corrected, right? I mean, that's not something that you need an off season to correct. Well, isn't that a very simple mechanic?
Yeah, it's just like a hitter swinging at bad pitches or golfer missing short putts. It's technique, and you get in some bad habits. I mean, I think anybody's played any sport knows you go through. All of a sudden you're not hitting, or all of a sudden you're slicing. I mean,
you had that when I played tennis with you all the time. You had many bad habits.
I had my worst habit was I had no athleticism. That was the biggest problem.
So, Jerry, for an offense that when it's firing at its best historically before DeMar DeRozan, the ball's moving. The Kings, as Grant said, is struggling this year from beyond the arc. But when they get 6+ seconds of ball movement, they're shooting it at 41% from beyond the arc this season. What is it like for a team, and how long should it take to adjust to more of an isolation style versus a free-flowing style?
I don't think it should take too long. I mean, I think the thing that worries me a little bit, it's not DeRozan. He's doing what DeRozan does, and he's very, very effective at it. But some of the other players, I've seen them become a little more ball stoppers than we've seen in the past. What you want to say, guys, you guys play the way you've always played. Do what you always do, and DeMar, he's doing what he does, and right. and also, I mean, he's a terrific passer. I mean, he's made next to Domas, he may be the most creative passer on the team. I'm kind of blown away by that, but so I think it's a little bit of that. That DeMar is going to be a little bit of an ISO guy periodically. And I feel like that when they do go into some of that, the guys have got to get more movement from them. instead of they kind of become sightseers.
All right, so that leads me to this question. And first of all, to backtrack, I've said I need to see this team play 20 to 25 games to get a real good read on them. And so I sit here today and I don't have a real good read on them. So I can only go by what the numbers say. So based on the question that Ryan asked, the critics of DeMar DeRozan coming to Sacramento, the responses were, it's not going to fit. It's not going to work with the other pieces that they have. It's like a puzzle. The pieces have to fit together, and these pieces just won't fit together because of the other individuals. Do you buy into that? Could that be possible? And I'm not talking about the Kings are a bad team, because I still think they're a good team, but that they have their limitations are to a point because of DeMar's style with the other players that it's really not going to put you over the top.
Well, I think it's obviously, I think there's some merit to it. It could happen. I think the key, as much as anything, is the other players. In other words, just what we just discussed is, them getting away from playing and doing what they do well, and allowing, maybe if letting DeMar's game affect them a little bit. And I don't think there's a bit of selfishness with any of the guys. I don't, but I think we are seeing a little more ball stoppage than we saw. So if they can't get that worked out, it could not work out as well as it should. In my mind, it's kind of like the shooting problems. It's minor stuff. It should, this is a talent league, and you add the talent. I mean, certainly Harrison Barnes is a good player, but he's not as good as DeMar DeRozan.
Jerry, it's pretty evident when Coach Brown draws up a play. First play of the game, Kevin's going to be coming off of a double screen at the top of the key, sometimes out of bounds plays. When we're talking about the issues we're talking about now, does the onus turn to Coach Brown to start getting a little bit more structured and getting more guys involved?
I think so. I think it's, obviously he's a very creative coach. I think as it goes, he can find different ways of getting his players involved. It may require a little more structure, maybe a little less spraying for the three ball. I mean, in other words, I've always said the thing that wins games is productive offense. Now, the Kings are extremely productive in the two ball.
Right.
But the three has been so bad that that brings down the productive level. I mean, you need 1.2.5 points per shot in order to win. And when you're shooting 20% of threes, well, that's 0.6 of a point. Like, duh, that's not going to work.
Well, unfortunately, it's a 3-point shooting league. It's not a 2-point shooting league, even though I understand the point you're trying to make. But the analytics say shoot threes. But, Bob Ryan
I'll
made
tell
it.
you, but Grant, here's the thing. You make 4 out of 10 threes.
I know.
That's 12 points.
I know, but how many teams are doing that in the league, Jerry?
Well, not many are even shooting that well. I mean, I think the point is, what I'm trying to make is, I'm not against shooting three. I think you should shoot them, should get them.
Yeah.
But you got to hit a reasonable percentage, and you can, if you can be productive enough at the two to, drawing fouls and everything else, you wouldn't have shooting threes to win in this league anymore. I believe that. I mean, it's the easier way to do it, and I mean, if you can take 30 threes and hit 13, then that even makes it easier to get your high productive twos.
Good point. Hey, we're 2 weeks away from Thanksgiving. Don't forget about Bennett's, the West Side Grill, their location in Roseville and Sacramento. They are open for Thanksgiving from 11 in the morning until 7 p.m. They also have pre-order Thanksgiving meals that are hot to go for pickup. How about that? You can just order your Thanksgiving meal and go pick it up at one of the 3 Bennett's locations. Go to bennettsrestaurants.com to make your Thanksgiving reservation now. That's bennettsrestaurants.com. Here's the issue that I see with the Kings, and I go back to what we opened up the show with, guys. If their bench does not get better, I don't think any of this matters. And I mean that. I don't think we can talk all we want about the threes and the twos. And I know that the bench is part of that because they shoot the ball too. But the point is the productivity of the bench needs to improve. And if it doesn't, I don't see any way in the world the Kings can be a top 6 team in this unbelievably tough West. I mean, I look at teams like the Houston Rockets that are really coming in their own. And then you have the Pelicans who are decimated by injuries. I think you can put them and say goodbye. The problem is you play them 3 times in 10 days in February. And by then they may be healthy and maybe they don't make the playoffs, but they're going to beat you once or twice. So, we always talk about this, but Jerry and Ryan, I hate to beat a dead horse here. The bench has got to be more productive. And if not, this team has got severe limitations.
Yeah, I mean, I let Brian get his thoughts on this, but I mean, I agree with that. I mean, I think that they're a small team, number one, too. They need more size, and that's showing up occasionally, if not pretty regularly. But the bench, now, having said that, I still am a little surprised that Coach Brown hasn't went back to Keon Ellis as a starter, because the starters can score. And you really don't need another scorer there as much as you need a ball mover and a spot shooter.
Great point.
And a defender. And then all of a sudden Herter makes your bench significantly better. And and he'd be, coming off the bench, you'd want him to shoot the ball more. I always say it was kind of like the old Larry Brown thing with Corliss Williamson when they won the championship in Detroit. He always said that, Corliss is a good enough start, but we want him on the bench, bring him in, and then we go to him every time. While some of our main guys are resting, we'll play Corliss 20 minutes, get him 15 shots, and he'll get us 20, that sort of thing. And I think there's a little bit of merit when you got a thin bench. Find a way to get some more productivity out of it. And that'd be one way, I think. I'm certainly not saying it'd solve the problems.
Jerry, it's a fabulous point. As you talked about defense earlier and changing looks up, one of the most important things to that Kings bench unit was the pick and roll. Malik and Monk, Sabonis, whoever else was coming off of the bench, that is what they feasted on, and it gave teams a different look away from, the constant movement and free-flowing offense. So your point about Kevin Huerter is so right. With Malik Monk out, you need that option there on the floor when you don't have Monk.
Yeah, I think you could get as much scoring out of Kevin that way in less minutes, and so it's just a thought. I mean, I know that nobody's ever right all the time, but I like the way he and De'Aaron played last year together. I think and plus with the addition of DeRozan, the idea of another scorer is maybe less important. With DeRozan and Sabonis and Keegan maybe gets a little more opportunities with that lineup, and then of course De'Aaron. So it's just a little bit of difference in philosophy, but that would be my suggestion.
All right, you look at the standings in the West right now. Phoenix, Oklahoma City, and Golden State are 9-2. Obviously, we're talking about injury situations for both Phoenix and Oklahoma City. Phoenix, we've already chronicled. You got Oklahoma City now without Chet Holmgren for who knows how long, but a minimum of 3 months. Denver's playing well now, 7-3, which is surprising to me without Aaron Gordon. And, I talked about the Houston Rockets. They're 7-4. Memphis is 7-4, and they've got Ja Morant who's out. And I look at where the Kings are, and I look at Minnesota, their next opponent after tonight, who's 6-5. And I wanted to talk a minute about them because they made a major change in the offseason. They rolled the dice and they traded one of their best players in Karl Anthony Towns, and they got Randall and they got DiVincenzo. And again, I think this is another team that we need 20 or 25 games to really zero in. But they have not been that good this year, guys. I'm talking about the T-Wolves, even though they beat Sacramento on opening night by 2 points.
I couldn't agree more, Grant. I've watched them a good bit, and they're just not as good right now. Now, also, I don't think the Knicks are either. And so, I would go along with your feelings here. 25 games, we'll have a better idea. My suspicion is both of these teams will sort it out. They're well coached, and I think in a lot of ways what they did made sense, but it hasn't yet. But there's a lot of games to go, but they're not as good now, either one of them. But I kind of sense that they can get it worked out.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jerry, especially with the Timberwolves, because I don't think Towns and Edwards ever had chemistry, and it takes time to build a little bit of chemistry. And I think Randall and Edwards could put something very special together with their games because of the physicality that they both play with.
I think the thing with the Knicks, and I think certainly Towns brings them something they really need, a scorer in there at the center position. But they lose Hartenstein's toughness, and back to Grant's thoughts on Oklahoma City, I couldn't agree more. Without Holmgren, they're be a little thin. But when Hartenstein gets healthy, he hadn't played
Yeah.
yet. And he gives them something they really don't have, a big tough buckaroo in the middle. And I mean, as good as Holmgren is, and those guys, so physically, yeah, I think they'll be able to find their way and stay good until Holmgren gets back.
I think in the West, other than the Pelicans right now for the foreseeable future because of their injuries in Utah, there are no layups in the West. Portland has shown that you better be ready to play when you go up against them, all right? You look at San Antonio. Well, the Kings just found that out. Their last game, they lost by 20. Dallas is only 5-6, guys, but Dallas is still a good 5-6. You know what I'm saying? Like you better be ready to go when you play Dallas, and I think getting Lively back's going to help them. What's your read on Dallas, Jerry?
I think you better be very scared of them. I think they could be like last year. They'll click in mid-year sometime, and like I say, they got to the NBA Finals with that pretty much same lineup. Obviously, adding Clay and Najee Harris and losing Derrick Jones Jr. But I think anytime you got Doncic and Kyrie Irving, you got two of the hardest guys to guard in the world, and so that's how they got through Clippers and Oklahoma City and Minnesota on the road. And so, yeah, I think they'll be fine. The one thing I would think, and when you get your guys' thoughts, I mean, I was convinced San Antonio would be better this year. Well, I didn't know how much better, but I think they're going to get enough wins. I'm not saying to make playoffs or anything, but they're going to beat some of the good teams.
No question about it.
Yeah. I mean, they've got the outlier there. And when he's really playing well, they're capable of beating the best.
And don't forget about Devin Vassell. Look at what he did against the Kings in limited minutes. He is just getting ramped up right now, and he throws a whole different element into what San Antonio does.
Yeah, it's just there's so many things to work themselves out, and as we know too from watching the Clippers, they're better than they're supposed to be. Well, I don't know, how good they're going to be, but when you got James Harden isn't what he once was, but he's still one of the top 10 point guards in the league. Zubac is certainly one of the top 10 centers in the league, and now Norman Powell. I mean, he may be the Desmond Bain of the Clippers. A guy.
And they have a wild card waiting in the wings who might come back, might not, and Kawhi Leonard. He's pretty good.
Yeah, well, if he comes back healthy, he makes them a contender.
Exactly. That's right. That's the point
happens.
I'm trying to make. You can't forget about that.
No, you better not. And I mean, obviously, with Kawhi, he could play 30 games and get hurt again. But I mean, anytime he's playing, he's probably the best player on the floor.
Yeah, Jerry, I want to just jet back really quick. I should have asked you this before. Derrick Jones Jr., a name that you brought up that Dallas lost. Watching them this season, they don't look nearly as athletic to me. And I know they made a couple of additions. You trade athleticism for shooting with Klay Thompson, but it looks like a different team, at least on that starting five.
Well, they missed him. I think that was a mistake. I agree with you there. I think they made a mistake letting him go. Now, one thing to keep in mind, P.J. Washington has not been able to play. And he's a pretty he's not as lively as Derrick Jones, but he can shoot the ball. So, he's a guy that was a key guy in a lot of their wins during their playoff hunt. So there again, I mean, Clay is going to help them. I think picking up Najee Marshall will make up a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But I sure would. I mean, it's one thing to let Hardaway or some other guys go, but I certainly would have tried to keep Derrick Jones. I was just praying that the Kings would get him. He's not that big, but he's the next best thing, a lively Skywalker.
Yep. Remind everybody, Kings and Suns tonight. Ryan with the pregame show, the three of us at halftime, and then the postgame show. Again, the latest is no Durant, as you know, but Grayson Allen and Bradley Beal are both questionable. Beal with a calf and a hamstring issue for Allen. I'm going to just believe that they don't play, but that's speculation on my part. I mean, they've already padded up a pretty nice schedule at 9-2, and they did play last night, and they beat the Utah Jazz. But we'll see. We'll find out here in a little bit. But again, the Kings and the Suns this evening. Then you have a day to think about Minnesota, who beat you on opening night, and the Timberwolves lost to Portland last night. So you're taking on a Portland team or a Minnesota team that's coming off a loss. Again, 6-5 for the Kings. Their teams are so bunched up again in the West. I know we repeat ourselves, guys, but I still think we're going to have a same scenario. I think you're going to enter the final week of this season, and you're going to have 3 or 4 or 5 teams, just like last year, all fighting for that 6th spot and everyone else for the play. And I think it's going to be that close. I think it's going to be that bunched up.
Oh, I agree with you 1,000,000%. I mean, it's like last year. I mean, if Herter and Malik don't go down, I think the Kings obviously would have finished much stronger. But
no question.
They got hurt. And so that's the way it goes. I mean, Kings have probably had less injuries than just about anybody, so you can't complain too much. But
they better not lose Fox at all, because they don't have anyone that can be the backup point guard, in my opinion. I've talked about this for years. I think it's a real weakness on this team. You just got to cross your fingers. And I know Fox is not having his best year, and I know he's dealing with a finger, and his turnovers are up a little bit, and his 3-point shooting. I get all of that. But here's the deal, all right? When the Kings win, Fox normally plays very well, and I'd hate to see this team without De'Aaron Fox for a period of time.
Oh, boy. I mean, Fox would be the hardest guy to replace other than Domas.
You can't.
Yeah.
With the
they don't have anybody
Domas
on the roster that can play point guard, in my opinion, as a starter. They just don't.
No, they don't. And, I mean, McLaughlin is a place setter, but he's, if you
not a starter.
Yeah, not a starter.
Yeah, and Kings fans, get your tomatoes ready, because we haven't mentioned this team yet. The Lakers, 6-4. JJ Redick's done a pretty good job, in my opinion, with the same ingredients, mixing things up, and the Kings see them 3 times in December.
Yeah, I hate to admit it. I think you're right. I think JJ's done a pretty darn good job. And I think the key there, is will they stay healthy? I mean, certainly LeBron seems like he's healthier than just about anybody. But Davis, he may be out a little bit. And but I like, their rookie, Dalton Connect's that definitely got a chance to be one of the best rookies in the league. And a lot of people are going to be sorry they passed him, I think. But
one of those teams is Sacramento.
Yeah. But, as long as LeBron's healthy and Davis is healthy, they're capable if beating just about anybody.
Their road record, though, jumps out at you right now. They've lost 4 of their 5 road games. At home, they're 5-0, but they did not have a good road trip. They went east. They just got back and won their first game back after being on the road. But they need to play better on the road. But I'll tell you, you're right, Ryan, with the schedule coming up and the games that the Kings have against the Lakers. As we talk about, health is going to be such an issue. You hope that Malik Monk is back and fine by then. You hope that you don't have any other injuries. But again, the problem with the West right now is if you go through a bad 2-week stretch, you're going to bury yourselves. You cannot have a lull this year. Yeah, you can lose 2 games in a row, yes. But, boy, if you go into a bad stretch, oh, boy, you're climbing uphill for the rest of the season.
Well, gentlemen, I don't –
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I don't know how you see it. We talked about this yesterday on the Kings court. I think the easiest part, Grant, we've had this conversation, if the Kings schedule is over. If you go through the rest of the schedule, there isn't that chunk of games where you're like, okay, maybe they could go on a run here, Jerry.
Yeah, I mean, well, I just think it's kind of on the same point as Grant was talking about. We've talked about before. He's like, when you look at the West, I mean, you say Oklahoma City certainly had reason to think Minnesota, Denver, let's say, seemed like they could have some things pretty well their way. But the truth is, and I don't even know if that's true, but certainly there's about 6 or 7 teams so equal that they're all could all be 4 or 11.
That's right. Yep.
And until, and it's just, and maybe in 25 games, we'll have a better idea of it. But right now, there's no way you could say for sure, other than Oklahoma City, I think, even Minnesota or Denver or Dallas, you couldn't put them, put them up there for sure.
Right.
I agree. And I think the surprise team in the entire NBA right now is the Warriors.
Yeah.
They're sitting at 9-2. They've been great on the road. I mean, you think about what they've done on the road. They've won 6 of their 7 games. And then I talk about a young team, and I don't think they're going away for many years, Kings fans. So you better get ready for this team, and that's the Houston Rockets. You know, they started off this year very slow. They lost their first 2 games. They're all of a sudden 7-4, and I love their point differential, 4.9. I'll tell you, do not sleep on the Houston Rockets. Ime Udoka, I wouldn't be shocked if that team was a playoff team this year.
Oh, I wouldn't either. You know, they've got a really good rookie, and he can't get minutes.
How about that?
Reed Shepard.
You know, I mean, you know, that tells you something. I mean, you know, they'd like to play, but they've really got some depth, and as you point out, Grant, Udoka. I mean, he's an old school throwback
Yes,
coach.
he is.
I mean, he'll have a little come to Jesus talk with the young lads periodically, and they,
Yes, he will.
and they play hard. You know, I really do think they're going to find a way to work themselves into that top 8 some way. I do.
They play really stellar defense. It's one of those things for a young team that really impresses me. And then Şengün, he's kind of a diet Sabonis, diet Jokic. When they play off of him, they are dangerous.
Yeah, he is. He's Sabonis Jr. You know, I mean, he can really pass, play from the high post, a little better shooter probably than Domas, but not the rebounder or defender even. But you know, they happy to go through him, you know, and he kind of creates the unselfishness of the team.
Great
Well,
point.
and then I look at Memphis. I think they're getting Marcus Smart back tonight. He's been out with an ankle. We know about John Morant, right? We know about Desmond Bane. He's got an oblique issue. You know, we talk about all the injuries. You know, Ryan and I, we were talking about this the other day. I don't recall seeing so many injuries this early in an NBA season. It's unbelievable what's going on in the league.
Yeah, I don't either, and I've seen a lot of years. No, I think this. I mean, you know, the NBA is almost getting like the NFL, where you know you have a couple of injuries every game. You know, and I don't know why. I don't think the game's that much more physical at all. But we're, you know, it's a little depressing because so many stars miss time.
Do you think the Olympics plays into it, gentlemen?
Could. It
Yeah.
could. I mean, you know, you're especially guys like, you know, now Doncic isn't hurt, but I mean, when you're playing year round like he does every year, just about.
Yeah.
I mean, that has to be tough.
Right.
Some
It
ways.
is. Yeah. Rhino, the Memphis Grizzlies play the Lakers tonight. And I got to tell you, if Memphis wins this game without Morant, without Desmond Bane, I'm going to go, wow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're 7-4. They've been able to get the job done and win a couple of games. But, I mean, you don't expect that to happen with all those guys being out.
No, you don't.
I mean, and you think about it, when they're healthy. I mean, when Morant and Desmond Bane and Jaren
They're
Jackson,
good.
they're really good. And Zach Edey gives them a little something different in the middle that helps them.
Do you guys like him? Do you like Zach Edey? Do you like what he's doing for Memphis, guys?
I do. I mean, it's a limited role, but that's what they need from him. And I mean, as rookies go, you know, there's probably only 1 or 2 rookies playing any better or at least any more valuable. Let's put it that way.
And I think his effectiveness as the season goes on, because of the style of basketball he plays, will become more and more and more if Memphis plays into the spring.
Yeah, as players and teams get tired, he will still be 7'4" and 280 pounds.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we've got a really busy day continuing. Ryan will have the pregame show, Jerry at the intermission, and then we will wrap it up on the postgame show. We invite your phone calls. If you have not yet subscribed to the channel, please do so and give us a thumbs up. We'd greatly appreciate that. Guys, we'll wait for the injury report to be updated on Grayson Allen and Bradley Beal. We'll see. I mean, if you're Sacramento, you are coming off a very bad loss. You hopefully got a day of rest and treatment yesterday. Keep off your legs, relax, get ready for this game. I go back to what you say, Jerry, and I don't know what it is, but since the Kings moved into Golden One Center, and I think part of it was they weren't very talented, but that's not the case anymore. The last few years, they have had talent, and they have not turned Golden One Center into a home court advantage. That's got to happen sometime, and hopefully sooner than later.
It has to. I mean, they cannot make a strong run for top 6 spots without
Can't.
winning 30 games at home.
Yep. And they're off to a bad start on that mode. Rhino, I'll give you the final word.
Funny enough, although they're only 2-2 at home, their net rating's 4.3 at home, and it's
Yep.
about half that on the road. So,
Yep.
interesting note there.
Very interesting. Jerry, thank you very much. Ryan, thank you. And don't forget Rhino with the pregame show coming up before tip-off tonight. For everyone else, we appreciate you greatly, and we look forward to our coverage tonight right here on If You Don't Like That. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.